I want to welcome you all to Treaty 6 here in Edmonton, and welcome to those who have traveled from across Canada and from the far north to be with us today. I'm Miranda Jimmy. I'll be your host today, and I want to invite Minnie up to say a few words.
Hello everybody. It's good for me to be here because I have a very small remembrance of Charles Camsell Hospital. When I was a translator for government in Ottawa, I used to visit Charles Camsell, the Inuit patients there, and the translators in those days were very few in the 50s, so I was turned, like being torn everywhere to translate. But I have great memories of those Inuit that I visited. My husband and I have visited their graves in St. Albert, and I've also had calls from the patients' daughters and sons wanting to know where they're buried. Luckily, I had known where they were, and they came down to visit the graves and phoned me and told me they feel much better. So I'll just say a short prayer for the program. Koti kota katmantini mako katamaut to kill jacket. They call him our bag jacket. Makalana kishakatata kitangi masakivod. Amen. Okay. Yes. Oh, I meant to explain about the lamp. We light it everywhere when we have a meeting, even in our parliament in Iqaluit. An elder looks after it. The Aodla is a traditional lamp that was used before the electricity came. So, enjoy. Thank you.
So welcome everyone. The journey to get to today, I was reflecting on it this morning. It started about 13 or 14 months ago with a tweet to Danielle. I seen that she was doing some research about the Camsell Hospital in her role as historian laureate, and I was thinking about it and reflecting as an Indigenous community member, and thought you have to be careful where you tread. And be careful about the stories that you tell and how you tell them. And so that started a dialogue between the two of us, and we thought about the idea of reconciliation and how the Charles Camsell is one of those visual representations of reconciliation for our city. The interconnected woven history that it represents, and mentioning the Camsell in Edmonton, you get someone who knows someone who's connected to it. Even this morning, our AV guy was saying, I live in the neighborhood. I've got an opinion about it. Our host today that's helping with the food worked at the Camsell Hospital, and so everyone's connected to it in some way. Today we wanted to bring together different voices and stakeholders and community members that are related to the history of the Camsell Hospital, to make sure that the story of how it's told and how it's represented going forward is an honest, truthful one that respects all of the perspectives and different voices that are connected to it. So thank you all for being in the room today. Each of you has a place in making sure that the history of the hospital is told in a truthful way. We're honored today to have Minister Sarah Hoffman, Minister of Health for the Alberta government, here with us today, as well as Minister Richard Feehan, Minister of Indigenous Relations. So I'd like to welcome them. I also want to acknowledge that we're getting funding to bring you all here today and take care of you from Alberta Culture through the Alberta Historical Resources Foundation. So thank you for that. And now I'd like to welcome Honourable Richard Feehan, Minister of Indigenous Relations, to bring some opening remarks.
Thank you very much. And I'd like to start by thanking Elder Minnie Freeman. I really appreciate your prayer and starting us off on the right foot and making sure our words and our hearts are in the right place for our day today. I also want to acknowledge that we are meeting here today on Treaty 6 territory, which is a significant part of our history and may indeed become part of the history of the decisions that are made with regard to the site of the Charles Camsell Hospital. And I think it's just important that we integrate that in terms of the thinking that we have today here in our discussions and subsequently. And I'd like to give a special welcome to all of the people who traveled so far, many of you from Cambridge Bay, I know, and other places. And I really appreciate that you would take the time and travel so far to bring us your wisdom. Thank you very much. So I am here today to bring greetings on behalf of Rachel Notley and the whole NDP government, and I acknowledge that the Minister of Health, Sarah Hoffman, is here, but she's also the MLA for the constituency in which the Charles Camsell resides. So it's very fortuitous that she's here to hear, and both of us would be very anxious to know a little bit about what's come out of this discussion as we move along. So, as many of you know, for about 20 years, the Charles Camsell was a hospital here in the city of Edmonton treating people who had tuberculosis, who were sent down, First Nations people who were sent down from all across northern Canada. And as a result, it has a special history, a personal history for me as well, by the way. My daughter was born with club feet on both sides, and all of her surgery were done at the Charles Camsell, so I spent a significant amount of time at the hospital with my daughter, and so I am personally invested and interested in knowing what's happening here. So we know that while the hospital provided care for many First Nations people, and obviously it did many wonderful things in terms of saving people's lives and helping people recover from tuberculosis, it's also a place where there are some very hard and sometimes even haunting memories for First Nations people, and I think that needs to be an important part of our discussion here. The hallways of the abandoned hospital now really echo with the stories of people whose lives were transformed and turned upside down by coming to the hospital. And that's an important thing for us to remember. Sometimes those people who came from northern Canada never returned. And that can't be forgotten. It was the last living place of many people, many of whom are now buried out in St. Albert near what was once the residential school in that area. And I think it's really important that we have a discussion about that piece of our history, because we are at a time in our world, in Canada, where we are really grappling with the whole notion of reconciliation. What does that actually mean to us? We have committed to it. Our province is committed to it. Our government is committed to true reconciliation. And one of the things we have to do now is we have to actually put in the hard work and sometimes the gut-wrenching work to understand what does that mean? What is reconciliation in this world? And how do we live that and not simply just talk about that? And so I see the work you're doing today as part of that. I hope the work that you're doing today becomes part of our reconciliation with the peoples of the North and the peoples across Canada. That's my desire for today. So I think it's important that we honor their stories, their voices, their history in the work that we do. And whatever happens at the Charles Camsell now moving forward, I hope that reconciliation leads to something that recognizes and doesn't just obliterate. I don't want them to just simply wipe the Camsell off the map and pretend it was never there. I am hoping that we can find some way to acknowledge that part of our important history and heritage. And because if there's one thing that I do want to say, I think it's really important that as a group of people chattering and talking about this thing, that it is fundamentally important that we listen to the voices of the Indigenous people about how they experience this history and their hopes and dreams about where we go moving forward. That's the knowledge, that's the tradition, and that's the history that's going to carry us forward. And so it's really important that we hear their voices. I just want to end with saying a few things about what our government is doing, because I'm hoping that you will consider this as part of the work that our government is trying to push forward. When we first got elected in May of last year, one of the very first things we did when we entered into the House, the legislature, is we made an apology on behalf of our provincial government's role in the residential school, something that had never happened. And it was our way of acknowledging, right from the very beginning of our work as government in this province, that there is a story. And sometimes that story is sad and tragic. And we need to acknowledge that story and take responsibility for that story and move forward. And subsequently, we also made the decision to take the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People and bring it home, and to read through that, and to ask every single ministry in our government to look at those United Nations declarations, every single 93 recommendations or statements, and to say, how does that affect what we're doing now and how can we move forward? We also asked many of the Indigenous people in the community to also do that self-examination piece. And recently everyone has submitted their self-examination pieces, and now we're ready to begin what I imagine will be a multi-year conversation about where we're going to go. How are we going to take that Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People and actually make it part of who we are? And so I feel very privileged to be the person who gets to lead that. And if you have comments, if you have thoughts that you would like to have me hear about how those rights should be recognized, respected, and portrayed in this province, I just want to tell you I am more than happy to come and attend events or to listen to stories or to receive submissions if that's something that you would like to do. And I will. So let me just close off by wishing you a very good luck for today. I'm afraid I'm not going to be able to attend it, but I know it's being recorded, and we've already asked permission to receive the information. So good luck, and thank you very much for being here today.